Mic check, 1, 2, this ain't a pool track or crew. This warehouse 15, but legends speak true. 3 rings on my fingers, gold medals gleam. But under this armor, life ain't always what it seemed. Yeah, we trained hard, pushed limits, reached the peak. But the pressure cooker boiled, man, so weeks I couldn't speak. Sponsorships.
Welcome back to the Warehouse 15, and this is our third attempt today because we're having some technical issues. I'm not sure that TJ paid the internet bill, but we're going to be okay with that.
So I'm here working on it now.
There we go. As we said before, we're here, and this is our inaugural episode with our first guest ever, and I couldn't think of anyone better to have as a guest, and it was at the suggestion of my colleague and good friend, Coach Moreno. So I'm going to let him introduce him. But before we get started, my understanding is he hasn't signed the waiver, so we're going to get him to raise his right hand. And he promises to tell the truth to the best of his ability and not to get offended by anything that TJ or I, and definitely Moreno, will say. And if so, he will accept the apology of sorry, not sorry.
I agree to one of those.
All right, good. as long as we get one of them, we'll negotiate.
Sorry, not sorry.
All right.
No,
Coach Moreno, you're up.
Yeah, Mr. Lewis, first of all, thank you for coming on the show. And it's interesting because we've kind of got a little bit of a buzz with this little threesome that we've kind of got going here. No, did he?
Threesome?
Stop it.
Threesome?
I knew it.
Hold on a second. Hold on.
Grouping of 3 people talking about
Let me wrap myself up a little bit. It's going to get a little chilly in here.
No, but we've had a lot of people want to come on the show. So we were talking about it. And I don't know, I just thought you would be a great first guest just because of some of the things that we see in social media. I think there's a lot of things that we really agree on, and there's some things that we don't agree on. But so we're really happy to have you. So thank you very much for spending some time with us today. So, well, you know how this goes. We have a lot of fun. You start here and we go there, and we just keep it loose. So thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks. I'm looking forward to some friendly disagreement.
Nah. More agreements than disagreements. Believe me. But okay. TJ, what's up with you, brother?
I was just chilling. Just here, like in North Carolina, hanging out. Like I said before, I'm super excited for this episode. I know I was one of the people that talked the most Taekwondo with. It's always nice to have those deep conversations about Taekwondo and everything. So it'll be kind of cool to kind of get the fact side of everything, kind of really know what we're looking at. So excited, welcome, and let's do this.
Mr. Lewis, why don't you start off by just giving us a quick little background? I know we got a lot of subjects to get into, but tell us, a little bit about yourself. I know your daughter and your wife were involved in the martial arts with Taekwondo, but give us a little background on yourself real fast.
Okay. I'm a geologist by training. Spent 20 years finding gold mines all around the world, buying them, selling them. Then I spent about a decade doing the same thing with geologic hazards, evaluating their risks and stuff. So a lot of evaluation, a lot of number crunching. And so that leads me to a lot of hobbies that I have. I do this with climate data and stocks and population trends and all that stuff, but also Taekwondo. Got into Taekwondo when I married my wife in 2014. She had a 13-year-old daughter who you mentioned, Summer, who was really into Taekwondo. So we dove in with everything we had for the next half dozen years and had a super enjoyable time. I started doing analysis, and that led us to, I made lots of comments on, I think it was a site called Taekwondo Edge. I made a lot of comments and got in a big fight with Steve McNally of USAT.
Who's that?
No, come on.
Who's that? Isn't that the OxyClean guy? Doesn't he sell OxyClean? That's not him.
Something like that. So then we opened our own site, our own Facebook page called WT USAT Data and Facts, and we've been going full steam ever since then, 2019.
I got a question just real fast off the top before we get into more details. Like how long does it take you to come up with this, like with all these numbers and all these stats? I mean, is it about like, is it difficult to get that information? Because obviously for stocks and for weather and stuff like that, it seems like maybe that would be a little bit more ready. But man, for Taekwondo, I don't know how you get all this stuff so quickly.
Well, it can be a real challenge, and certain places are more challenging than others. And I'll just throw this out right now. For example, AAU is impossible because they don't have any data that they're sharing. I've asked for it, and they say, oh, yeah, we'll get that to you, but not happening. But USAT, I just download as much as I can off the various sites. And I actually do a huge amount of data entry myself, which takes most of the time, especially when it's big events like Worlds or Grand Prix, and there's all those different countries involved. So it just takes a lot of time. The thing that takes the most time is when we do scoring analysis, and we select a whole bunch of matches of the Olympic weight classes at all these events, and then we analyze where all the scoring came from. That takes a huge amount of time, and so we don't do it very often.
I mean, obviously, I work for the country of Brazil right now. We have, one of our guys that does that. So we know when we get, for example, when we get ready for big games, the Olympics, Pan American Games, where the draw is pretty much set. We have, right leg, left leg, what time of the round they score most often with, in what do they do when they're winning? What do they do if they're losing? I mean, sometimes I think it's a little bit too much, but I guess, you can never have enough. But I know that it takes a lot of time, and, we're doing it for, 4 divisions for men and 4 divisions for women with, like, a very limited number of athletes, when you're looking at the Olympic Games. So it's a lot easier, but I can imagine it'd be very painstaking, time consuming, and especially if you're just trying to get the videos off of, the internet or whatever the case may be. But
exactly.
Coach,
and one last thing is, I also take a look at USAT's financials, and maybe later we can make a comment about that.
I would love to.
Oh, I didn't know they had financials.
Sometimes.
Any quick questions, Grandmaster Perez, off the top of your head?
No, I think we did a little bit of research, and we have some ideas and questions, and I think that your data is always influential and correct, and always revealing and thought-provoking. So I think we're ready to go and get into some of this, because I know it's hard to do that kind of work, but more importantly, it talks to trends, which I think you're good at illuminating.
Thank you.
I'll start with this, maybe just an open-ended question, like why do this for Taekwondo? I know it was a hobby, because not many people stay around once their kids take off, right? I mean, they just, it's not important to them anymore, but you've stayed around for a number of, years, you and your wife, and I know you're fans, but like, why dive into so much?
That's a great question, and I get asked that by my wife all the time. We enjoy it. We invested blood, sweat, and tears and treasure for half a dozen years with our daughter, and it basically was almost the equivalent of a college education price-wise. So when she dropped out in 2019, and she dropped out because she had the ultimate successful failure, in the sense that in 2019 she was the alternate on the U.S. World Team, the Pan Am Games team, and the World University team. So 3 strikes, and she decided she was out. But we did not want to give up. We actually really love the sport, even though sometimes I make fun of ourselves. And it's just, it's a niche sport that I think there's fascinating information about. The people are wonderful, with the exception of 1 or 2 people here and there. We love everybody. And,
Sure.
The U.S. Open is frequently in Vegas, or more recently Reno, so it's easy for us to travel to.
Yeah. Tina, you up? I can keep going, but
Oh no, I'm just listening. I'm listening. I think all of us. I know I had a chance to actually be in some of the training sessions with your daughter, and she spent some time with the W Cup guys. And I've actually been at your house before, if I as I remember. So that's kind of a longer story. But no, I think, like, for me, at some point, I would like, if we're just talking about things we want to go over and talk about. I mean, I'm always interested in, like, the correlation between the cadet and junior and moving on to senior success and all that stuff like that. So if we get a chance, I'd like to, I know you probably have it in front of you, or maybe you can pull it up a little bit. But just because I think last episode we were talking about, was it the coaching aspect more, or was it nature versus nurture, that whole thing? I think that's a good little kind of statistics to add to that whole conversation. So
Sounds good.
let me ask you this: like, what do you? I mean, recently you've had 2 big topics. Like, number one, the decline in the USA Taekwondo's organization as far as their numbers, and then of course, you I think maybe even a little bit before that, if I'm not mistaken, you talked about the age of the Olympic athletes and the performances, the medal performances of those athletes as well. Like, give us a brief overview of your data as far as it pertains to, like, the numbers within Taekwondo within the USAT.
Okay, well, you're right. I did a couple of recent things, and I'm trying to pull up old data And I even
Yeah.
lose my own data because it's on a different computer and it dies on me. So, there's a lot of recreation of information. But you probably remember. I'm just going to hold this chart up. Look at that
Yep.
chart right there. That's ages of Taekwondo athletes, older ones over here, and they peak around age 13, and then they just plummet off in terms of competition. And so that's
Is that here? Is that in the United States or
that's the
worldwide?
United States. That's in 2019. There's 800 competing early cadets and youth, and then it drops off radically at each step to juniors, and then seniors, of course, just plummets through the floor. So that's the challenge that you guys have talked about, and we have here, and probably other countries have as well, but maybe not as pronounced. So, and then in USA is USAT. Even with on top of that trend, where with people age out and select themselves out, there's this big shift over the last half dozen years, and some of that might be the pandemic, and where participation dropped off by almost half. A lot of clubs, I understand, closed. Dojangs just went away. People gave up. Parents, athletes gave up, but they're coming back. And so that all shows up at nationals and US Open, and also in this recent thing where USAT is trying to get their regions organized. So we took a look at the whatever it was 7 or 8 regions that they suggested, and there's this grossly disproportionate number of athletes in each region. So we suggested you might want to shift that. And then we also looked at, I had that same data for 2019 versus this last year, 2024. And the numbers are just staggering. In 2019, we had, well over 7,000 competitors, and now we're like 4,500, including color belts. And in some areas, like the Midwest and the Great Plains states, the numbers are down by 75%. So it's down everywhere, but really bad there. I can't explain.
So let me ask you this. Again, I know it's not data per se, but like for example. Okay, so from when you say 17 to now, right? That was
19. So 6 years.
19. Okay. So 19 to now, and yes, the pandemic was in there, and that hurt a lot of people. But the martial art business industry is back up. It's rebounded. I mean, people are doing extremely well. So there's people there, but they're just not coming back. And so my question, and maybe this is just again, it's not facts, but like, what do you have an idea of what that could be contributing to? Because listen, you've heard us on this show, and I'm going to say it again. The current administration has basically been in step since 2018, 2017. Some coaches were hired, a new CEO was hired, and so that's over their tenure, and it's tanked. And so, my thing is, of course, I can give everybody a strike or a mulligan for the pandemic, but after that. Why hasn't there been an increase? Is it because of the disarray? Is it because of the changing of the system? Is it because of changing of the selection procedures? There's got to be something that we could point it to, but what is your best guess?
You gave a really good list there that I think all are factors. I think there's disillusionment with the way USAT changed their pathways, they call them. In fact, that was how I got in a big kerfuffle with Mr. McNally back in the day. I think it was in 2019, I ripped apart, I analyzed their pathways and suggested some improvements, and that led to World War VII. So, their pathways keep changing. It's maybe a little less obvious now, but in the early part of that period you just talked about, their tenure, the pathways were specifically designed for specific athletes. They're what I call the Black Ops team, and then that became the academy, and now the academy is smaller than ever. It's secret still as to who's even on the academy. At least AAU, Tops, and the ACE team had the pictures of their athletes on a website, so you knew who they were. You just have to sort of guess sometimes. So it's a big disillusionment. The prices have gone up for events. There's been complaints about that recently. And, moving around to different parts of the country that aren't popular, like Reno for the US Open. Even though US people showed up, the Europeans and the Asians hate it. So it's going to hurt.
Yeah. I mean, listen, as it pertains to the U.S. Open, for me, I listen. I think the United States has to do a better job of international relations, and me and Master Perez have talked about that with one of their fearless leaders. Because listen, we're not the only game in town anymore. There's opens everywhere, and there's good opens everywhere. So before, people rushed to the U.S. Open because it was a premier event, but not anymore. It's just another event. Could it be a good event? Could it be a great event? Yeah, yeah, yeah. But right now, you might as well go to Canada. You can go to Mexico. You go to Rio. You go to Dominican Republic. If you're just trying to get points, you don't really have to run over to this G2 anymore because they're everywhere. So I think USA Taekwondo better, have some better relations to get some of these big teams over if you want to keep that level up. If not, it's going to be, in my opinion, a Canada, United States, and Mexico Open. That's what it's going to be.
And don't forget Brazil.
Brazil will come. We didn't come this year because we had our team trials the week after, so it didn't line up. But yeah, and probably most likely in the future, it's a big tournament and it's worth a lot of points early in the year. So yeah, I'm sure we'll be there.
And you're right about the proliferation of G events and G2s. There's more G2s than ever. There's one this weekend, a huge one in Holland, the Dutch Open.
It's big.
Yeah, 630 seniors signed up. So yeah, big.
It's always a big tournament. Yeah, that's always been a crazy tournament historically.
I was actually talking to one of my athletes today. We talk about Michael Rodriguez, and we were talking about watching it this weekend. That's the kind of nice thing, we can kind of see it on live or on TV now, on the internet. But I was telling him, and we talked about this athlete, you guys, last week, about Clay Barber. I remember in the 90s, in the late 80s, Clay used to always talk about the Dutch Open and the Copenhagen Open. And at the time, opens weren't important. It was just kind of a small thing. And I'm like, who cares? I mean, who cares? But like now, that term has been around the longest. It's the biggest. It's got the deepest field. I mean, that's like a mini world championships. 60, 70 people in division, some, top level athletes. You're not getting in many Asians, but you're getting a lot of the European, bulk of Europeans are definitely there. So yeah, we're going to have to, I think the United States is going to have to do something to make our event a little bit more special. Have you ever been, I dare to ask this, have you ever been approached or asked by the USA Taekwondo to do any work for them, to crunch any numbers for them, to assist them? I mean, you did this great thing on the regions, which I think we should talk about that in a little bit, but have they ever contacted you for anything?
It's yes and no. So, Sherman Nelson is, a very talkative guy, and he's asked for some
good work.
Sherman who?
Some free work. I'm not too interested in doing a lot of, painstaking work for.
He's a pastor, so he should understand the value of free work. Go ahead.
Yeah, I've listened to some of his sermons. Anyway, so he's reached out a little bit. I've talked to him. I would contract to them if they wanted me to do some detailed work. Jay asked me last year to contribute to their World Taekwondo Improvement Committee. So I sent him a bunch of data that actually did compile. And, I think it's reflected in the tenets that they want to try to improve on for 28 and beyond. And that was mostly just scoring analysis and showing how much Gamjons were, far too dominant as a scoring method. A quarter, nearly, 20% or so of points of these major events are from Gamjons. And people just don't like that. It just ruins the viewing experience for so many. So, and then there's other coaches who say, they should hire me, but I'm not moving from here. And, it could be a piecemeal effort.
Yeah. But obviously, I think there's certain things that you've done already, just because you wanted to, that I think is very interesting and probably very helpful, like the regional thing, because I know you broke down the regions in probably a more scientific way as far as the numbers, so it kind of made sense. So it was a little bit more, what's the word? Equal, a little bit more balance within the regions. Right,
and California is its own almost country, and they perform that way too at the nationals, in particular at all levels, cadets, juniors, seniors. Well, especially the younger people, the cadets and juniors. California really does extremely well, followed by New York, Texas, and Florida. But even with California, it's interesting because there's like 500, 600, 700 people that go to their state tournament, and then they also go on to other events around the country like nationals and these they're calling them grand prix or finals, whatever they're called, the money raising efforts. And so, but CUDA sent me a spreadsheet of lots of information about the athletes. They withheld their names and ages, but they had zip codes, so I could track them down by zip code as to where they were in the state. And CUDA hadn't even done that.
Wow.
So they thanked me very much for sending it back to them, and so they could see where their athletes were coming from.
So I got a question for you, because I mean, I agree with in principle what you did, but like, for example, I know, and I'm going back a couple years in gymnastics and in wrestling, for example, there was hotbeds for those sports. Like, for example, in the Midwest in the 80s and early 90s, the Midwest was the hotbed of wrestling. And but they didn't really worry about the other regions. Matter of fact, it's either you get better or you don't. And I think that eventually, for example, Pennsylvania got good, California got good. All of a sudden, these regions were forced to get better. And you see that a lot in American football, American baseball, American soccer, all this stuff. I mean, there's always going to be these hotbeds, but they divide it up and they say, you guys either pick it up or you just stay behind forever. Do you think that's any good in that, or do you think it's just better to do it? Because I think I'm mixing two things. If I'm just talking about performance, I'm almost like either you get better or you don't. If you're talking about regional training and trying to give people have a good balance all around the country, I think the statistics side makes more sense.
I think you're right. There's, with these, I guess this year they're going to call it the All-American Open. There's going to be two of them, an East and a West. And, perhaps there should be, three of those. There should be a true West, true East, and then South.
Yeah, but they're allowing like people that aren't even U.S. citizens to fight in that competition. So I don't really know what the point of that competition is.
What?
So the American East Open and the West Open, you don't have to be a citizen, but you can't go to nationals. You could fight the tournament, but I don't know. I don't get that. I'm pretty sure that's what it says, right? So I'm not making that up.
I did not know that. I did not know that right now.
So they're allowing people to fight the competition for what reason? But this also leads into our pathways or whatever to make the national team, get to national, all that stuff. That's weird. I guess I got one question. Just and I guess we'll go back to that. But like, I don't understand. So what's the point of the regions? Because I've read it, and I don't like what are the regions supposed to do? What are we doing with the regions? I mean, that's for anybody. If you guys know, I don't know.
I'll venture an opinion. It's just to add. I'm very critical of it in general. I think it's just to add another layer of middle management as far as coaching and training and administration, and then it's really a money making exercise. You have more events that people have to go to, and it makes a lot of money. USAT has actually been very clever the last couple of years with how they raise money and how much money they're raising. They're extremely flush right now.
Yeah. I mean, we used to do regional. We had regional competitions. We had was it states, regionals, nationals, right? I think we talked about this a little bit before. But we had those four. Was it 4 regions before? Coach, do you remember?
I mean,
like I went to like. It was something like that. But anyways, my point is that it made sense to have you had states who you had the medal, or you had to get like top 8 at states or top 4 at states and then get top 4 at this one. So it kind of all made sense. And I just don't know the point of like, we're making these regions to do what? Are we going to have a competition in those regions? Is that what is that what the point of it is? To separate, to have like a regional competition as opposed to like state and then regionals of that area that they're putting it in, I assume?
I listened to the podcast where Mr. Nelson described it, and that was part of it was to part of it was to introduce region versus region competitions, which I don't think is going to go anywhere.
Yeah,
I listen. I personally think that it's for show. It looks good. It kind of sounds good. We're going to break into regions, but like if you get down to like the specifics, well, who's going to come? What's it going to do? Why should I go? Why should I invest money into that when the pathway is over? It's just, like you said, it's layers of middle management. It sounds good. Maybe it was in you and your wife's like little podcast thing that you put. You said it's not going to work. The way it's structured, it's not going to work. I mean, from the coaching all the way down, and I was kind of like, I thought that was a bold statement because it's not going to work because the plan and the structure of it won't let it work.
Right. Yeah, you're right. It was a little controversial. We share our opinions as well as data and facts. I actually
Sure.
I got a call that night from my coach in Europe who said, man, if I tried that, I'd get shot. So it resonated in some
Give them
places.
time. Give them time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, and then of course there's the elephant in the room where they basically excluded you guys on purpose. Say we're going to invite everybody in except for these guys over here. So that's offensive. I think it's extremely counterproductive. If you're not involving all the best people, then what's the point?
And it's not just us. I mean, there's a lot of good coaches out there that I think that, just for whatever reason, if they're not they're not kissing the ring, they're not running out to North Carolina, and that they're being excluded. A little, personal rant. I mean, think about it. When they came in, they talked about building this thing and including and being transparent. And like you said, you don't even know who's at their academy. To exclude high level athletes and high level coaches to actively work against them is just strange. Which is, it brings me to an interesting point because I'm going to just use the GB model. The GB model was individual coaches for maybe 2 or 3 athletes or even weight categories. That's their model. They came up with it. And now it's just the opposite. It's like everyone together, do what we say or don't don't be involved. Like you would think that they would say, I mean, it sounds self-serving. Coach Jennings, you work with X, Y, and Z. They made the national team. Let's bring you guys in so we can all have our best performance. Instead of saying, get out of there, we'll take them and let's see what we can do with them. And they're not moving out there. They don't have funds for you. They can't bring you out there to train. Like, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, And so when I hear about this regional thing and, all these little, if they can't do it at the top, that's where maybe I should go with that. If they can't do it at the top, what makes me think they're going to do it at the middle level,
Yeah, excellent point.
Yeah, I think you guys made a good point when you brought up the whole, what were the 3 words? I think it was like synergy. What were the 3 words of judgment they were using to tell people that that's who they wanted to work with?
Yeah, it was integrity, synergy, and coalition, or some word like coalition.
Those are some tough words, but like even that in itself, like who writes that? Like what? How do you, as a company, as an organization, say this is what we're gonna pick this off of? We're gonna say who has these 3 things.
Well, that was written by the Communist Party, actually. So if you had synergy with us, if you had integrity, if you didn't, then it meant you got to understand what they're saying. If you're not part of us, then you lack integrity, you lack synergy, you lack qualifications. That's what so you got to remember, McNally is a snake oil salesman. He came from a background that he has no history in sport. He has no education in sport. He didn't attend the memos program to develop sport leaders. Bob Gambardello did, I did, and a number of others have. And in that program, they teach you how to build NGBs, support systems, and pipelines. That's not training that McNally's had. McNally, and by the way, neither did Jay Warwick. So neither Jay nor McNally have the requisite training to build a pipeline. Jay, in his experience in the USOC, does have it, which is interesting because he was one of the guys who oversaw the most unsuccessful portfolios of the USOC, not the successful ones. So when I was on the USOC board of directors, I oversaw 8 sports that were successful. Jay's history has been as a portfolio manager for them. He had the unsuccessful sports, and he's carried that over into Taekwondo. With McNally, his background was a PR guy. Hey, mate, everything's okay. Don't worry. Don't look over here. Don't look at this hand. And don't worry where my other hand is. Just worry about this hand over here. So he's the master of deception. And so, yeah, they're not looking for that. So when he says, I've had numerous conversations with him where he's intimated to me about the integrity of individuals on this phone call currently right now and in the organizations. And he does what they do now. He says, oh, I can't tell you what it is, but just don't associate with them any longer. I can't do the right Australian accent, or I'm not even sure he's from Australia, but I think he's from England. He missed the boat to Australia, and unfortunately found a boat here and brought 2 of his friends. So I don't want to digress, but I think the work that you're doing is amazing the question I think becomes, what do you see? What do you see the use of the data for? Forget about the organization because it's clear they're not going to do anything with it. How can coaches or athletes use the data to their benefit, and to what end goal?
Well, that's a really good question.
That was
And
actually Juan's question. I stole it.
No.
okay. I get feedback, especially at events like the U.S. Open and a few other things we go to, from parents in particular, and also coaches. A lot of coaches come up and express their gratitude for just compiling information, because it's not always easy to find, whether it's from a specific event, and who did what. The brackets, sometimes brackets are very hard to find, and also with parents in particular, they don't know a lot of the rules, in WT or USAT, the difference in points between those two things, what should a cadet be doing to prepare for juniors and on to seniors, and should they bother, and all that. What about going to college, et cetera. So get a lot of feedback, and it's the feedback I get is positive, because nobody really comes up to me and swears at me and say I hate you, although I'm sure they're out there. And it's just the volume of information. Not all of it is going to stick. I basically have a throw it against the wall approach, and some of it falls completely flat, gets almost nobody looking at it, and that's some of the work I actually really like. But other stuff, it does make an impact, and it's really about just information sharing, the rules, and then it's frustrating when things are not transparent. You said the word transparent. Things are not transparent, whether it's meeting minutes, which are just non-existent in some cases, or they just stop years in the past. The financials, which I mentioned, they're hard to find, and even harder to understand. And most people don't go into that, but I do. But athletes, it's mainly parents that give me the feedback that they then pass on to their coaches, of all things, and their athlete students.
Have you had anybody from, because I think this would be a great business for you, like if you could come up with a format, like, listen, for X amount of dollars, I will break down your data wise, like your kids' performance, scoring performance, defensive performance, right leg, left leg, you know what I'm saying? Like kind of what I talked about with the Brazil people. It's just, here's a profile for your athlete over these 5 matches or whatever. And if they ever got better, you could say, if you want me to do it for your competitors, I could do the same thing. And, I'm surprised someone hasn't, because it does make a difference. If you could, what we did in Brazil, people are like, oh, I scored my cut kick all the time. And we're like, do you? And then we went back and we're like, you don't. You think you do because you use it. And they didn't realize it, and maybe just in the eyesight, you're like, yeah, he cuts all the time. He's real good with that. But actually, he scores with the back leg 63% of the time, So right. It's interesting what people think they do until they actually have that raw data in front of them.
Right. And, no, I have not done that. I don't, it wouldn't be worth my while, I don't think. And people wouldn't want to pay what it might cost.
Okay.
But, a couple of things you said really stuck with me, where you think that, some people think that this is what's going on. And then, of course, there's a layer of, is the equipment working? And we see it all the time at events where the first day, the equipment isn't working. And so, it surprises me sometimes that the athletes don't change their tactics, in the second or especially third round, if there's a third round, where, either data and sometimes even KP&P, the body gear is just not working. You got to go to the head, you got to punch, you got to gam jump. And, people, they just don't react.
Coaching.
Yeah.
Coaching.
Coaching.
I'm sorry, guys, if I'm dominating this thing, because I got all kinds of questions. You said something about the financials. Like you said there was flush. So I'm thinking, okay, that's pretty good. So then my question, maybe you can kind of get into that a little detail, but if it's so good, why not support the cadets? Why not support the juniors? Why not support the senior national team to come out for training camps and things like that? I know you can't answer that because it's not yours, but how flush is it? How are they making money?
It's really flush for a few different reasons, and I'm actually going to do some analysis and post it at some time in the next week or whatever. But they're adding these events, the finals and those regional events, And then I think they increased fees. The amount they're making, the most recent data we have is from 2023, which is not off their website. It's off a one of these nonprofit trackers that have the most recent financial information. So I had to go there to get USAT data. But in 23, they set a record for the most money they've made from the U.S. Open and Nationals and these other events they organize. It was like 2.2 million, whereas normally a high year was like 1.8. So there's like 400K right there. The fees, registration fees, I think have gone up a little bit. The numbers have increased, and so they were making around 700 grand a year. It fell off during the pandemic. Now it's back up to close to 560,000 in 23, and then in 24 at their July board meeting, they had a financial presentation which is poorly described, but basically they had at that point $900,000 in the bank. We're $700,000 ahead of budget because of increased participation and not sending the teams, really anywhere because they're waiting for the Olympics. That's continued. They haven't been shipping people off in the second half of the year. So I think they're sitting on, I would guess, and I have to finish the numbers, but well over $1 million in cash, 1.2, some number like that. What do you think it would cost to send cadets to Worlds this year? 200,000?
No,
it's 100.
not
Not
even.
even,
100,000.
Well, there's 10 of them. There's 10 of them. There's 10 of them, and it is a long tournament, so it's a little bit more than a normal. But yeah, wow.
100 grand. But they're doing what I call blue sky budgeting, right? So everybody can make a profit if you don't pay your expenses. So if you don't fulfill your mission, and their mission is to equip and send teams to get international experience, to develop a pipeline that can perform and put people on the medal podium. When you don't do that and you keep that money in the bank, then you're cash rich, result poor, and you're doing what I call blue sky budgeting. And, I had a long history in city government and quite frankly on the USOC's board of directors and budgeting. And when you look at the budget per plan and then the expenses per plan, and you see that they're not doing the plan and they're not expending the money per plan, then you get blue sky budgeting. So if I need to make my numbers look better, I simply start cutting and saving. And saving on, you can cut and save on certain things, but you can't cut and save on the core mission. And what it sounds like they're doing, one of their core missions is to fill the pipeline, and that would be giving juniors experience and funding their ability to participate. When you have a national championship or a team trials where people don't show up, they don't show up because they've given up. And when you have blue sky budgeting, you're paying the salaries of the clown car, and there's enough people in the clown car. It starts with Jay and Steve and now Sherman and anybody else that's willing to drink the Kool-Aid. Yet you have athletes outside the gates of the bourgeois sitting there going, just a piece, let them eat cake. And these poor athletes that are out there looking like little Les Miserables, peasants, can't get to an event because Jay and Steve are going and doing the World Taekwondo Improvement Foundation. I got a clue for World Taekwondo. Bring Taekwondo back, and that'll be your improvement. Not that hard to do. Change the rules, but the blue sky budgeting would be interesting to see. And the question is going to become: at what point do the facts betray the appearance of what some people think the truth is? And once you do learn the truth, do the masses arise and take care of business, which is fire McNally, get rid of Jay, get rid of Sherman, get rid of the clown show, empty the clown car and get a pickup like TJ drives around in Kentucky or wherever he's living.
Listen, I hope you do get that, that kind of financial stuff. And because it'd be interesting, because I think that people always listen. I'm a businessman. We're all business people, and we want to make money. I'm all for people making money. I'm all for paying people what they're worth. But I think there always has to be, when you have a non-for-profit organization like this, and you gotta take care of your athletes. And if there's that much money and they can't bring the cadet kids together to train, to bring the junior to train, if they can't do it, what are they doing with that money? Who's getting that money? Because that's just, to me, that's unacceptable. If there's $1 million sitting around somewhere, if there's 500,000, if there's 200,000, you should be spending on some of these young kid athletes so that there's incentives. I talked to a kid the other day. TJ knows, your dream was to make a national team. One of the carrots was, you make the national team, they provide for you. They take care of your stuff. Now I'm like, I'll go to these opens and get a medal here or there and get a wild card. The U.S. team has almost been broken because there's no incentive for these kids. The parents got to pay their way anyway. I'd rather go with my mom, dad, and my coach versus go over there, you know? So it's just, I hope that if you could produce those things or give some kind of light, that would be really interesting for people to see.
I just don't, like I said, like what I said in the beginning, I don't know how we don't see that as being important. Like, how are the juniors not, like, how is that not a funded trip, a funded team, a funded group of individuals? Like, that's my part. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. If the goal is, and we talk about how the turnover rate now and the age and how fast they become Olympic medalists and all that stuff. Because I think I made a comment on one of the other ones there. When I was trying to make the national team, I was sitting behind 27, 28-year-olds. They were adult men, and I'm coming in at 16, 17, 18. So it was a little bit of a different vibe. But these kids are now making an Olympic team and getting Olympic medals at 16, 17, 18 on a normal rate. It's like it's normal. So my question is, how is that not important?
Well, this is a kerfuffle that's turned into a catawampus. And when you understand that, then everything else is going to make sense. And at the end of the day, when you allow ultra-crepidarians to run the organization, you're bound for a kerfuffle wrapped in an enigma, which is a dilemma that's wrapped in a catawampus. And now that we find ourselves here, the question becomes, what are we going to do about it? And until the reality goes, if I take my family to dinner and I buy myself dinner and I look at my other guys and I'm like, oh, good luck. And they're like, Daddy, don't you run a taekwondo? Yeah, I do. There's enough money for one of us. I'm gonna take care of myself first. That's not a leader. A leader doesn't. A leader feeds the troops first. And so Steve McNally, Huckster, took a pay raise, and now pay him what he's worth. He was getting paid what he was barely worth. Now you're not sending kids to tournaments while you're sitting in plane seats. That's tough on the kids. It's tough on America. In what other country could you do this? So you got to take a look and listen to the PR Huckster and what he's doing. And then the other guy who's pulling the strings behind the scenes is Jay. And Jay is ridiculous. But Jay's always been that way. He's always been a politician that looks out for the best plane ticket because he doesn't like sitting wherever he lives alone and playing with his fly fishing. So it's time to put down the fly fishing rod and actually pick up the rod, stay home, fish a little more, get out of the taekwondo and let some people lead it that can make it go. But anyway,
Mr. Lewis, I got a real question. I've got a question for you.
Write that one down.
I know it's a big open-ended, but like if you thought there was like one thing like you could provide USA Taekwondo, whether it's whatever organization, what would be something you could implement that you think that would just improve us?
Well, you guys have just mentioned it, I think, really clearly. Juniors, juniors are the future of 28 and then beyond that. I put out tables and charts showing the ages of Olympic medalists and the lighter weights, the two Olympic weight divisions in both male and female. There's a lot of teenagers spread around there, as TJ mentioned, 17-year-olds who, might even be 16 because they're 17 that year. And then, 18, 19-year-olds. And this last year, of course, in Paris, we had a number of teenagers, even in 67, 3 of the 4 medalists were under 19.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, you got to get the juniors involved. And here's a dilemma that Say Sport has created. And, Say Sport might have great ideals, but I think it's really hurting, the development of junior athletes in Taekwondo and probably other athletes. I've been told that the academy is not allowed to have athletes there who are not 18 years old. And so, even though Christina Tichat was there when she was like, I don't know, 15 or something, that seems to have stopped. And so they're reluctant to involve juniors in a variety of things, it seems. I'm assuming I'm speculating. And so, but that's going to be self-defeating in terms of Taekwondo because the lower Olympic weights are very young. They average, like 21 years old. And the heavier people average like 24, 25. It's not like they're 30. There's a couple of oddballs that have already won medals that come back and win another medal.
Sure.
But, and then that brings me back to the US at the Olympics. And you're the only male in 58, minus 58, who's ever gone to the Olympics for the US. And, what's with that? And there's hardly any
That is
49ers.
crazy.
There's 2 49ers.
I never even thought about that, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But you know what? They can. I
You
mean,
liar.
maybe
You
they
think
can.
about that every day. You
No, I never thought about that.
you
I always
fibber.
think about like being
You think
17,
about
but I don't think about. I
you
never even thought about 58.
2-1,
I did
man.
not
You
think about
killed
that.
that line. That line is now dead. There's only
Listen,
one of you, and that's forever.
hey, no, I was gonna say like I know they can't, maybe they can't have people living full time at the academy, but they can bring people out there, and if they have the money you say they do, they should. You know, they've had it last year. They did, you know, they've done it a couple times, but it's always been self funded if you want to come out there. So, or you know what? How about better yet? Maybe these coaches could get out to these places and actually invest in them. I mean, no offense, and we're not perfect, but like for example in Brazil, like we're focusing on our Olympic level athletes, and we have 2 men and 2 women that are right now under the age of 17. And we take them with us, you know, to these international training camps in Uzbekistan and Korea, all the different stuff, because we know that one of them, Maria Clara, was like that. And Hike, the 80 guy, they were these little kids that nobody really paid attention to, but they had a little something. It panned out for us. It might not pan out, but you got to at least try.
Yeah,
and
but
we're not trying
you
in this
don't
country.
expect these snolly-gosters to do this, do you? Really? I mean, you can't let
He's
these
making up
guys.
words now, Mr. Lewis. This is what happens on
No,
our show. He
they're
just makes up words.
they're slubberdigullions, and they can't do it. These are snollygosters. And in case you
But I mean,
don't know, a snollygoster is an unprincipled but shrewd person. And I couldn't think of a better word for him. And just because I like words, a slubberdigullion, depending on how you pronounce it, that's somebody who's a drunken fool. And you can there's a president of a particular IF I'm thinking that falls into that category.
Right.
But all kidding aside, on
Yeah.
the sense of I think the thing that I've always respected about you, Mr. Lewis, is your unflinching willingness to take the data, analyze it, and then let it lead where it leads. So, and when you see that, and when you talk about that, I think the next set of questions become: to what degree does the organization listen or recognize the problems inherent in it? And I'll point you to a movie in particular, and it's a movie about a baseball team down this way, the Oakland team, Moneyball. And this guy, yeah, the guy took a ton of that data and said, okay, here's what we should be doing, and they went on to win whatever they won, right? Became a better team. And I always looked at that and I was like, you know, Coach Moreno said something interesting. Yeah, they probably couldn't afford it, but the idea that you take an unflinching look at what happens and why, and then to try to determine why. In the past, the WT somebody did an analysis of, or it might have been you. What was the highest scoring techniques and in what situation? I think it was in Korea. And you guys would be surprised to know this. But what is the single most high scoring kick in Taekwondo?
Korea?
No, in Taekwondo. Back in the day.
Back like
roundhouse where?
To the body.
Nope.
To the face?
Yep. And the reason will surprise you.
No, but that makes sense because it was more obvious.
More obvious. But the roundhouse kick, they did more, but they didn't always score. Roundhouse kick per percentage of attempts and scoring. You roundhouse kick somebody in the face, you got a point 99% of the time. So that's useful information, because now when you're fighting and you know that you can score a round kick to the body, but if you kick them in the face, you're definitely going to get a point. That's, you know, one of the analysis I'd like to see you do in the future, Mr. Lewis, is I'd like to see you go and look at when a play, I will when I can. Right now, I'm trying to get away from the slollygosters, but it's tough because it's a kerfunkel and a catawampus all wrapped into two. So with that said, the analysis I would love to see, because I see it in many different sports, is there's a way people play when they're trying to win a match, and then there's a way when they play when they're losing a match and trying to win the match in the last 30 to 40 seconds. And it would be interesting to see when it works, why and how, and when it doesn't work, why and how. And I have my own theory on it, but I will guarantee you will see a different experience. You'll see a different choice of techniques, and it's actually, unintentional. So when a guy is losing by a point or two, they'll try to score something that they know will definitely score a point, as opposed to trying to score what should score a point. But anyway, those. I think it would be interesting to see where your research could morph into, and given the opportunity, how it could improve the performance of a U.S. team, much like in Moneyball, it was improved for Brad Pitt's team. Not that he needed Brad Pitt's, he's got first world problems. Sorry, not sorry. But I think that would be interesting as a sport. I think on the other side of it, once you get through this financial data, that would be interesting information for the USOC, because there
I
is
gotta.
that you can't, as a nonprofit, keep $900,000 in the bank. It's illegal under nonprofit law. It's got to be mission specific and spent on mission specific
Oh,
stuff.
I'm sure they got a mission for it.
Oh yeah, I know
got
what
a
the mission is. Yeah, go ahead.
personal question. How many gold mines did you find, sir?
3.
3?
Yep.
Hey, TJ, we got to hit up to the house. We're going to Reno, man. We're gonna find some gold. I know he's got a lot.
He's hiding up there in the mountains.
Buried somewhere.
He's in the mountains. He's got storage rooms. And
I'm looking at the house right now. I'm trying to figure
He's
it
got
out.
a tree on his ceiling. He's got a plant with a tree in the ceiling. I mean, this is a guy, and then he's got sort of.
There's a secret button behind that like opens up the wall or
something. He's got carved dolls up there that are either some sort of ethnic art from something or other, or it's a picture of like.
I want to hear about these gold mines. Where'd you find them?
One in Nevada.
Is that a Kachinka doll you have up there?
Yeah, those are trophies my wife won from bodybuilding.
Oh,
okay.
but pull over a little bit more. There's one over there that looks like a Kachinka doll. Do you know what that is?
Oh, that's Wonder Woman over there.
Oh, never mind. It's not a Kachinka doll. I apologize. So
yeah, so we've got resources.
yeah,
awesome.
That's what rich people say. All right, we're good. We're good. You don't have to say no more. I don't want it to turn into a kerfuffle. So, with all that said, TJ, what would you like to see? What is something that you think that Mr. Lewis could do that would help you in your day-to-day life? And I'm not talking about sharing the location of his infinite amount of gold mines, which he goes and plunders when he runs out of Kachinka dolls, but.
I think for me, my biggest thing is, like I said, we said it a few seconds ago, but the juniors. I want to see the junior stuff. I'm always I know you were supposed to always have a few minutes still talk about it a little bit, but just kind of like that has to be something that we're doing. I just don't. If we're not doing that, then we're not trying to win. There's no way you can explain it to me any other way.
Right. Yeah, and I was tracking worldwide the number of junior world medalists, or gold medalists in particular, that went on to be very successful as a senior. And I was surprised, but it was actually a relatively low number.
It is.
Yeah, like the Italian guy who's in 58, I forgot his name at the moment.
Vito.
He won gold in both. But it's, kind of few and far between. It really surprised me. And, there's a ton of Iranians that do extremely well in juniors and cadets. Now there's cadets. But even they don't, Mobina Namatzadeh is an exception. She won medals at both recently, and she's still like 18 or something. But a number of other ones didn't either. So, they just have so many people that, maybe it doesn't matter to them.
I remember back in, like, when I was coaching the U.S. national team, I'm talking early on, I remember the USOC provided us documentation that in our sport that junior success didn't necessarily translate into senior success. But I also think that the sport was a little different. And so it took a little longer to acquire, results. But I think now, going back to your data about how young it is, people are winning. Like you said, TJ, they're winning consistently at 16, 17, 18. And then they get out and somebody new comes in. So that's, alarming if that is if that's the path, yet we don't have that. Like nothing. Like we don't have anybody 15, 16 that we go, oh my gosh, they're the next best thing. So that's
we did. If you look at Anna Zolicich's background, I don't think she ever lost a match as a cadet or junior. Like none.
No. Yeah. No, but again, she was an anomaly.
Yeah.
Right. There was nothing around there. But I think I think there's people out there that we could do that. We could run them, and they could They could be ready, but only if they're invested in, only if they're taken around. If you're just relying on these local coaches, because now I'm going to go back. I think in the United States, we have a problem because historically we do extremely well cadet and junior wise in the Pan American region. Matter of fact, we usually dominate. They usually dominate. They go to the worlds and they're pretty competitive. In a couple divisions, they'll pop out a medal or two, but then it just keeps going down and down and down because a lot of these local coaches, they run them so hard to get better so fast. And then by the time they're 16, 17, 18, they're tired. They want to move on, where some of these other people have better investment and better kind of methodology. And that's why these kids can perform at 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Ours are gone by the time they're 16, 17. Part of it is because of the local coaches, but I think a bigger part is the federation that doesn't say, here's where I can take you. Here's where we can assist you. They got to make the decision. Yeah, I'm going to go to, I'm 17. I got to get ready for college.
Right.
I got to go.
Yeah.
And this, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah, I think I was going to mention that, but he mentioned that, the United States has different parameters for kids at that age. So kids will become competitive and then they go to college, unlike swimming, where the kids have the same problem. They're competitive, but they get college scholarships, or soccer, like my son, they get a college soccer, end up in a college program. So they get another 4 years to 22 to become successful. And then swimming is just such a big money sport. The problem then you have is the bottom is pushing out the top so quickly. So you get a guy, unless he's an outlier like Michael Phelps, you get a guy pushing you out as soon as you win. You win one and you're done because there's another kid swimming just a second faster than you.
But at the university level, it's almost a death sentence right now in this country because 98% of the places you're going to go are not going to have a dedicated sport program with a dedicated coach. And so, yeah, you could be in the Taekwondo program, but it's almost like you got to move to the area and go train with somebody else, or hope that the area you live in has a decent coach. I mean, that's
you can always
even
go to
back
North
then,
Carolina.
Even back in those years that the collegiate team was fully funded. At least there was teams at that level that were fully funded at the collegiate level. That used to be a pinnacle thing. You went from junior team to collegiate team. The next goal was to try to get on the Pan Am championship team, and the world team was ultimate goal. And then that's just what it was. But now I think not having that I know people still do collegiates, but there was one point that the USOC paid for it. When we went to some of the Izmir games and university games.
The USOC, you got to understand why the USOC paid for it. So the USOC dedicated money, and I don't want to be a flippant, but the USOC paid for it because it was part of the USOC's plan that was submitted as a high performance plan marker by Taekwondo. So Taekwondo received the majority of its budget. And this is the problem I just realized now, I forgot. As a part of the high performance plan, you make your markers and your events, and you want the ones funded, and you request funding. When you receive that funding, you either use it or lose it. So when you say, I need $100,000 to go to collegiates, you got to use it. What you don't use has to be returned, can't be repurposed. But when the organization itself is putting 900 grand in the bank or whatever, it can do whatever it wants with it. The USOC's money, it's got to account for, but it doesn't have to account for the 900.
But that goes back to the transparency and stuff like that. Where is that money going? Because you're right. If they made TJ, to your point, to Mr. Lewis's point, if it was transparent and they said, listen, the marker is going to be this, this, and this, but they don't want to, support that collegiate because maybe that's not their, they don't control it per se, or they don't run that tournament. So it should be a marker because that would help with development. But that's the
USOC's problem. In other words, the USOC takes the high performance plan that's given to them and they say yay or nay. And right now, that used to be volunteer driven. So volunteers would look at that and say, oh, that's good or that's bad. And quite frankly, I'll give you an example. And it's speed. It's cross country skiing. So the USA skiing sends in a thing, and I'm the guy overseeing it. So I look at it, and when I look at it, I realize that all their selection criteria is subjective, and it seems objective, but it says if somebody wins this, they're on the team. If they win this, they go to trials. If they win this much, and then when you take a closer look at it, they never win those events. So the entire plan is subjective. Now a staff member wouldn't have caught that. A volunteer caught it. I caught it. So when the USAT puts in its plan, they go, oh, that sounds good. Oh, they're going to do what? All right. And that's because
Well,
stuff is like, do the X's and O's add up? And I've got right now, there's 45 sports or whatever, and each guy's got 8 or 10. So he's like, next.
listen, that may be true, and I don't blame the USOC. I blame the USAT because you got people doing the high performance plans that have never run programs. They've never run high performance
Don't
programs. They've
care.
never run
They
successful schools.
they don't care. 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 They if
Now,
they
let's get
cared, but listen, how could they care? They went to an Olympics and their top prospect didn't medal. They don't care. They don't care. They
I
got to
get it.
go. They don't
I
care.
get it.
They went to
Let's
Paris
get
and
back to
won
Mr.
gold.
Lewis.
All right, I'm
Let's get
sorry.
back to Mr. Lewis. So what's next for you guys? What's next for USA? The WT US page. I mean, what's next? I mean, you just keep plugging along, or do you have anything?
What's your
Anything
goal?
special?
What's your goal?
Yeah,
What's
maybe
your
that.
vision?
Yeah, maybe that.
Since it's a hobby, I just do a lot of stuff, and so I'm not sure there's too many goals involved. But I want to see improvement in USA performance at major events like Senior Worlds, Junior Worlds, and similar events. The Olympics I see as a bit of an anomaly because it's such a restricted cadre of athletes that can go. And it's but it's the ultimate. But I look at Worlds as a real benchmark as to how the U.S. is doing, and something that I was just actually pulled up a chart that I had that it's an older chart, but I got 2011 through 2023 our performance at Worlds, and the thing is that we're not really improving, even though in 22 there was a gold with Michaela, and last time there was a silver with CJ. I really look at quarterfinals and up. So the best that the U.S. has done in quarterfinals and
Let
medals.
me guess.
Yeah, go ahead.
2017.
Definitely not.
Well, no, 17 was
1987. 1987.
no.
2015. 2015.
No, I'm not. No. Let me before I say that.
2015.
2015.
Yeah,
Because,
but I was in the recent. I was thinking that I wasn't thinking that long.
Yeah, this is between 11 and 23. So yeah, in 2015 we had 2 medals and 3 quarterfinalists, including Mr. Terrence Jennings, and that's the best.
I got.
That was Shella Binks, right?
Yeah, me and Servette.
Yeah. So that's the best that the U.S. has done in those criteria in those 7 world championships. Last time was only 2 people. CJ got a silver and Michael Rodriguez got a quarterfinal. That's it.
1987, the entire men's team medaled with the exception of maybe one. So 1987, 1987. No, actually, I think everybody medaled. 1987.
No, he didn't.
Dude.
Flyweight didn't medal.
Who was a Paul guy. Yeah, he's a good guy. He didn't medal. We didn't count. First year on the team, he shouldn't medal. First year on the team, he should carry bags and make ramen. So 1987, historically most successful teams in the history of the sport at the Pan Am Games, at the World Championships. And the reason was most handsome team. We weren't.
Yeah. That what you were doing was the electronic era? It was from the
electronic. I wouldn't even. I was talking about had I seen the electronic era, I would have ran to another sport. Had I seen what passes for Taekwondo now, I would have ran to pickleball. I would have become the world pickleball champion, or I would have been the first male not to change gender and try to become a synchronized swimmer. Just so you know. And if that didn't work out for me, I'm going right to curling because I knew I could do that.
But let me go back to Mr. Let me go back to this.
Forget about him. I got one last thing to say. And then I will go. I seriously, and this is a fact, and I think you know this, Coach. After retiring in '92, I seriously considered going to luge, but not luge, skeleton, because in the entire sport in the country at that time had 10 people that were doing it. If I entered it, ran on a sled, fell on it, get down the hill, I'm in the top 10 no matter what. Unfortunately, and I wanted the swag. I wanted the Olympic swag. Unfortunately for me that year, there was this kid, came from a long line of skeleton guys. Jimmy O'Sullivan won a gold medal at the Worlds, crushing my dreams of being a 2-time Olympian in different sports.
I feel that, though.
All right, go ahead. I just had to share that. And I didn't mean to be but
that's my thing. I love data like that. I love data like that you said, Mr. Lewis, because you said you put it out there. Hey, so wait a minute. In the last, again, if just like in our presidency and in our country, when things are going good, you want the credit. And when things are going bad, you got to take it on the chin. And so these guys now they've had 2019, 2021, 22, and 23. They've had these world championships under their belts as the program directors, as solidified, bona fide, and we're having 2 quarterfinal finishes. That's success. I mean, it's a tough one. And again, I'm not
You
thinking
said that's the best one from 2015. Was the last one from 2015 was the best result?
Yeah,
2
5.
medals.
1987.
I mean, but that's my point. You know what I'm saying? Like when people tell me their success or that's healthy, like how do you explain that? Remember we talked about people, eyes are saying one thing, but data and facts are another thing.
I said that like it's an illusion.
Yeah,
that's like,
and
if that was you, you would have lost your job. Listen, no pun intended, but I lost my job in 2012 when I had 50% of the team and 100% of the medals, right? And in the Pan Am Games the year before, I had 50% of the team and I had 100% of medal rate at the Pan Am Games. But it's funny because now I don't know what standard they're using. But
there is no standard.
Early picture of, for those of you watching the podcast instead of listening to it, early picture of TJ as a youth.
At least I have long hair. I used to have long hair for real though. But there is no standard. There can't be a standard because we're only worried about the few people that are in that room. If you're not in that room, then it doesn't matter. They're not there to coach the whole USA team. It's never a goal about trying to be the best in the world. It's about their guys doing well, and that's it. Past that point, it's irrelevant. So that's a crazy one. 2015 is crazy because I was mad that year. I think we wanted more that year. Like, of course, we always wanted more, but those were tough matches.
Yeah, Steven Lopez lost in the quarterfinals too.
Yeah, I forget who he fought.
15.
Fought in quarters.
Did he fight the Iranian kid?
It might have been. Those of it. Oh yeah, it might.
Not Iranian. Was it Iran or was it?
I don't know. I
was thinking the Azerbaijan guy. Yeah, it was tough matches, but yeah, that was good stuff. Well, listen, Mr. Lewis, I just got to say, for me, I'm so impressed that you're still around because I love people like you that are just just fans, and I know you have the time on your hands a little bit, you're busy with other stuff, but I love that you take the time to give this stuff, and I love that, like Coach Grandmaster Perez said, like it's just so forthcoming, whether it's for Canada, whether it's USA, whether it's Brazil, you're like, hey, here it is, guys, and you don't apologize for it, and unfortunately, I don't think people take you seriously enough. Because I think at least in this country, even though I work for another country, if I was here and I was running things, I mean, I would hire you. I mean, I just think you have too much good to offer, for a number of different reasons. Because we need someone like you to crunch the numbers. So I hope you keep doing some good things. I hope your page keeps growing. I see more and more people liking it, and not just from the country, from around the world. People are looking at it. So that's pretty cool stuff. Good stuff.
Well, thank you very much. One final thing I just want to throw in that I forgot to mention, I wanted to highlight it, is that in terms of all these financials and stuff, the move to Charlotte, North Carolina, had a massive improvement in everything too. I didn't even say that they're getting about $2 million, including in-kind contributions from that sponsorship that they got there. So that's one of the reasons that the bank account is building up. And so that was, a very smart strategic. But now, like you've all said, it's time to support the youth, and in many different ways. I like these talent ID camps, send them to Worlds, Pan Am championships, all that stuff. Really support the youth.
Yeah,
I agree with that's second and tertiary thinking, and I think you're right. I forgot about that. So, although I often joke about that move because I don't think it was in the best interest of the organization. It was a cost savings, and then the VIK stuff, which is value in kind, is important as well, and that's where you get the savings. But then it's really a question of what you do with the savings, and that's
that's my thing.
Struggle.
So, listen, not that Colorado's the Olympic town, and I don't think it was the hotbed of taekwondo either. But moving there was, of course, they had they got a great deal. So it is what it is, but they got to invest in it. They got to use those other resources to.
Well, we've taken a lot of your time, and we try to keep our podcast to a certain length, just the right amount of time before somebody gets annoyed enough with us where they realize that we're not as smart as they thought we were. And so I want to thank you on behalf of the Warehouse 15, and apologize for anything that TJ may have said to offend
was
you.
innocent.
And certainly, you know, I don't know why he kept sending me those words to say snollygoster and such, but I just wanted to share those as well. Any parting thoughts from anybody?
Like I said,
Go ahead.
yeah, no, exactly. No, just thank you. I appreciate it. I think we got to do it again. I think we got to do it again. I think maybe for the purpose of actually having 3 or 4 topics to kind of talk through. I think we kind of jumped around a little bit and kind of touch here, touch there. But I want to, like I said, have those conversations connected directly to the statistics. So maybe next time we'll be able to pick another date and maybe do just 2 or 3 things and get to those things directly. So that'd be kind of cool.
If we can get you off the mountain in time.
No, I'm going to say the exact same. First of all, thank you for coming on. I'm going to say, I just feel like you kind of fit it in with this group, you know, to be honest with you, because you're independent thinking, you say what you want to say, and good luck to everybody how you guys interpret it. So I think you're right, TJ. As some of these topics come up, I would love to be able to bring you back a little bit more specifically. That'd be awesome.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a blast. I love it. And yeah, if I could do some preparation on a subject or two, that would be helpful to me, so that, you know, I got some real numbers to just say blah 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 blah. And we could do that. I love it. You know, being independent has a lot of value. I can say whatever I want. So can my wife, who says a lot of things that she really wants. And it doesn't affect us because we're not in anybody's pocket and not asking for a handout.